Hey, it's Dr. Pedram back with Dr. Sara. Hi.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Pedram.
Hi, nice to see you. Hello, everybody. So today's topic that we want to talk about is this recent AMA designation of obesity as a diagnosable disease. And it's sent a lot of ripples into the media. There's been arguments on both sides of this, and it's complicated, right? It's a complicated debate. It's something that we all are affected by one way or another. And so what we wanted to do is kind of tease out both sides of this argument really today, and kind of bring to light some of the challenges and issues with this, so that we can talk about it and kind of stoke a debate, because it isn't black and white. Most things aren't, and so for us to kind of bring out those topics and debate them, I think might be a healthy way to go about it.
I love that, Pedram. I love that. Should we dive in? Kind of the pro versus con? I feel like we're going to do a Saturday Night Live skit tonight.
It might turn into one. Okay, so here we go. I'll do the pros and the cons here. The pro is that, the American Medical AMA basically seen that 1/3 of adults, 17% of children have basically medical conditions that are coming from obesity, right? So it's obviously leading to the fallout of all this stuff is already there, right? So it's a given. Obesity is causing a lot of these problems. That isn't really being argued. And so they're saying it'll encourage primary care physicians to get over their discomfort about raising weight concerns with obese patients. And studies have found that more than half of the obese patients have never been told by a medical professional that they need to lose weight. Okay, so
wait, so can we hold right there? I mean, isn't
absolutely.
that kind of a stunner? I mean, really? Half of people who are obese have not been told that they really should lose weight. I find that shocking and maybe a little depressing. And then it also makes me feel like, okay, it's a good idea if it raises awareness, because it seems like we're in the dark ages about obesity and the clarity about how to approach it. I mean, I think another thing that we should talk about today very briefly is some of the determinants of why people become obese, but I'm going to try to stay on topic right now. Mm-hmm. But didn't you find that stunning? That
I really did. It's if you fly to San Antonio, if you fly to certain parts of the Midwest, and there's a great percentage of the people in the community, probably including the doctor, that are overweight and have a high BMI, it just becomes this kind of given, right? And it's gotten to the point where there are so many obese patients that the doctors go, I've been in rooms with cardiologists who say, well, we could prescribe diet and exercise, but we know they're not going to listen, so right? And they kind of chuckle about it and go about their conversations about what drugs we're going to give them, because there seems to be this sense of dismay in the medical industry where a lot of our colleagues have given up, right? And that's a problem.
This is an important intervention for them, right? If it's going to take those among us who are jaded as physicians, who are not talking about the lifestyle changes that are proven to move the needle when it comes to weight loss, then I think this is one of the arguments in favor of it. I think I would agree with that. I mean, I can really see both sides of the issue, but this is one that I think is important in terms of raising awareness.
Yeah.
And I also think, can I just define body mass index? I mean, maybe everyone already knows their BMI, but body mass index just is the proportion, the ratio of your weight to height. And ideally, you want that to be between about 18 and 25. That's the normal weight. And then 25 to 30 for a body mass index is your overweight category. Above 30 is obesity.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people in the obesity. I mean, most Americans are kind of nudging up into higher BMIs, and then the obesity is starting to take the lead in a lot of these markets. And so it's obviously an important issue, right? We all know that weight gain leads to heart disease. I mean, diabetes, fallout from diabetes, all the stuff that comes from diabetes. So it is obviously relevant for all of this. The real question is obesity itself a disease, right?
Right.
And that's where, you could say it's just a word, but it's not, because once you have a diagnosis, and let me be clear, the AMA designating this in this capacity doesn't make it a diagnosis. It hasn't quite, it's more of a suggestion, right, by an industry leader. So it's kind of nudging the argument in that direction, but that's not particularly what's happened yet, right?
That's right.
Okay, so let me just tease this out real quick so we can then just keep going through this. So, obviously they haven't been told, which is a huge issue. And the causes of obesity are complex because genetics, stress, food, medications, and all that. So there is an argument to say that self-discipline can't cure obesity alone. So it really kind of brings out and brings to light some of those issues. And basically, it's not going to change what the AMA did. Isn't going to change it, but what they're trying to do is stoke greater communication on this topic, right? And then one of the things that they're trying to push for is if it is a disease, then insurance companies will be more supportive of obese people, and researchers will probably pursue it more aggressively, and there'll be a lot more kind of public health efforts to go about this as something that is kind of a national dilemma and is an issue to go. But obviously there's a wide range of topics and health problems that come, which is high blood pressure, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, which we already talked about. But there's also an increased risk of cancer. So, a couple other arguments for classifying it as a disease are, potentially people can receive coverage from their insurance and are more likely to receive nutritional counseling, because right now people say, well, I can't afford a nutritionist. And then you just look at the dollars and cents of this whole thing, and the direct cost of obesity is over $535 billion a year. So what we're trying to do is, in this is saying if we're raising awareness, we could potentially lower our healthcare spending for problems related to obesity.
Now, this is another place, Pedram, where I find it somewhat depressing that we need to classify obesity as a diagnosis in order to have these structural changes in terms of getting insurance to pay for some of the treatments, in terms of doctors talking about it more in their offices and letting go of some of that jadedness. So I wish that it didn't come to this. I wish it didn't require these structural changes for it to be a more kind of front and center topic in those 7-minute appointments that are the average for appointments across the United States. But maybe we need that.
Well, I mean, push came to shove, I guess. We've been talking about it. Every week it's in the news somehow, right? And so the country is not getting skinnier; it's getting fatter, and our health problems are starting to catapult. So, and I'm going to make an argument probably later. I'm going to talk about the cons real quick, but I'm going to make an argument for. I kind of side with Mark Hyman on this, in that you spend so many hours in the healthcare system, maybe 3, 4, 5 hours at the doctor's office in any given year, and then you have 8,000 something hours that you're just going about living your life, and I would put it to everyone that that's where health really happens. And I know you stand on that same side of that fence. I don't think it's, once you get to the doctor's office, it is a disease process and it's a problem. But the question is, how do we educate people and move the needle on the front side of this so that it doesn't lead to these epidemic proportions, and you don't need to get all these bypasses and stents and all these really expensive interventions once it's already a huge problem. Right. And
you're absolutely right. I mean, we're at this place right now, as you were describing, where 2/3 of the population is either overweight or obese. And I agree with you that the rubber hits the road where you really are talking about the lifestyle changes, those small decisions that we make every day about the food that we eat, the exercise that we get. But I also think it's important to recognize, even with all of our research and awareness about the drivers of obesity, that food and exercise alone doesn't explain the whole story. And you mentioned this briefly before. We have to look at some of these other reasons for obesity, such as environmental toxins. Seems like that comes up every time you and I are in conversation, as well as genetics, as well as the microbiome, which I hope we're going to talk about in a future session. But I think some of these data that we have on microbiota, the bacteria, the many pounds of bacteria that you have in your system, and how they change depending on what you eat. Whether you have, more sugar, more fat, that changes the bacteria and makes you more likely to be obesogenic. So, sounds like we're going to go to the cons next. Are we ready for the cons?
Yeah, let's just bang it out and then start talking about it. I guess let's get it all on the table, because there are strong arguments on the cons side of this as well. So what people are saying obesity should not be diagnosed as a disease are basically they're saying, excuse me, telling all obese people that they have a disease is end up reducing their sense of control over it. And, there's evidence to suggest that people with addictions, telling them that they have addiction basically turns it into some sort of self-defeating spiral, right? And so then they're saying, look, if insurance will make adjustments to cover these procedures that'll treat obesity, more people will kind of opt for bariatric surgery and maybe not, which is obviously a lot more drastic of a route than going for, say, nutritional intervention or lifestyle coaching or things that would potentially change it, but take a little bit of buy-in, right, from people. So it might be an easy opt-out is one of the arguments. Patients could use the disease classification as a crutch. We've seen this with other things and say, oh, well, I have this. And then basically, one of the arguments is, what about GMOs? What about chemical additives? What about all these endocrine disruptors, all the stuff that you're talking about right now that that are lifestyle and society problems that we need to look at beyond what, people are doing that are obese. So there are obesogenic types of things out there. And then that really kind of begets the question of why, right? Why is America obese? Why is this a disease, right? And then there's the socioeconomic stuff, right? Impoverished communities don't have access to or can't afford properly balanced diets in a lot of ways, right? If all you could afford is, $1 meal at McDonald's for your kids every day, and at least it's food, I understand that, right? You got to feed your kids. So, not having access to proper nutrition and information about the nutrition and all the kind of disproportionate carb loading in cheaper food is also a big, problem with this obesity thing, right? And so, and that is something that needs to be talked about again, I think, on a macroeconomic society scale, right? And so, and that's really the argument, is they're saying these changes needed are political and economic, right? And so, if we had safe neighborhoods where people could go out and play in the park and exercise like they used to, maybe that isn't the thing. Having availability to foods and access, and making them more affordable, and making the workplaces maybe a little more encouraging towards health and fitness, and allowing midday breaks to go out and do stuff and not being so production oriented is a big argument. And then there's one other kind of smaller argument that talks about the BMI calculator maybe being a little too general and not accommodating for some individual characteristics. And so some doctors are arguing for a better standard to diagnose these patients. And so that's kind of, there's obviously a lot of argument that we can make on both sides of that, but that's kind of the long and the short of, what I kind of have in front of us here to go for. And I know you have a lot of opinions on it, so I'll let you start, and then we'll kind of keep circling around and finding if we could find some common ground with other people.
Well, this argument against it, the arguments that you just listed, I think many of them are compelling and really great food for thought. I mean, I heard the learned helplessness argument, that people are just going to have this sense of, oh, well, I'm doomed, I'm obese, it's a disease, and so I'm going to give up my power around this and, take the latest pharmaceutical instead of stepping into the lifestyle tweaks, the redesign that you and I know and love. So I think that argument for me is less persuasive. I can see it on more a population level, how that is true. It also, some of the things you mentioned about structural changes and how it's not just the physiology, it's also the governmental and societal issues that lead to a more obesogenic culture. Those remind me of an Atlantic article that I just read about Michael Pollan. So I happen to live here in Berkeley with Michael Pollan, journalist, author, and he is a proponent of really stepping away from the big food industry and focusing on, eating the foods that our great grandparents would recognize. And this Atlantic article was saying, to really affect change in terms of food in this country, we have to work with big food. And how do we do that? It's not going to be as successful to work outside of the system. So I think that that's an argument that is also in favor of opposing obesity as a diagnosis. But give me your opinion on that.
I got a few. Let me tease them out. One is, I've spent some time with Bruce Lipton, who talks a lot about placebo effect and positive impact on your belief systems and how your outcomes are in health. But, the obvious opposite of that is the nocebo effect, which is if you tell someone they have some sort of negative disease or diagnosis, then all of a sudden it starts this kind of negative spiral, right? We know this from people who are given cancer diagnoses. It's almost like a curse, because then in a lot of ways it's like, oh my God, I'm going to die, and then they got to change their whole head space and their frame, because we tend to be that way. We tend to be hypochondriacs by nature, and when you're given some sort of disease classification, a lot of people take it the wrong way, right? And so being told you have this disease called obesity is a challenge, because I do believe in medical cursing. I do believe that we have to be very careful in how we diagnose and communicate diagnoses, because it can dramatically impact the way they're going to orient with that news, right? And so, I've been around healthcare long enough to say that not many of our colleagues are the best communicators.
Oh no, Pedram, really?
I mean, God bless them. They're out there doing good work, but it's just, I got someone coming in 7 minutes, and I got to go in there and tell this lady she's got breast cancer. Okay. Right. And it's horrible. That's kind of the way the system is set up. And then that kind of, for me, that drags us back into that macroeconomic systemic thing. I mean, we talk about this in the Vitality movie. I know you and I talk about this all the time, is that there is a broken medical system. It's all about the reimbursement and driving units through machines and generating revenue for things. And, it's dehumanizing in a lot of ways. And so I think that element of that dehumanizing capacity of the system, which, there's a lot of good news on there, and we could talk about that later in a later show, but there's a lot of positive light coming through in different models for healthcare now, but the traditional system has been very bad at that, right? And it's alienated a lot of people, and it made people with heart disease go to Reiki healers exclusively and go off their medications, sometimes for better or for worse, right? And so there's been a lashback, right? And that has, I think, come from some of the miscommunication and the poor bedside manner that comes from the nocebo effect. But systemically, I mean, I couldn't agree more. We're doing a story. We were just with Life Kitchen. We're doing a story with a number of these kind of big food suppliers, and there's a lot of these guys. Like Life Kitchen just got a couple operations guys, former kind of McDonald's guys that I think are trying to burn off some karma now, right? And they're doing a clean supply chain, healthy food model in a fast food capacity, because you're right. The systems are already there. All you really need to do is replace bad food with good food, and you've got yourself a very finely tuned trillion-dollar food delivery system that's already in place. And if the consumer says, hey, I don't want to eat this garbage, I want organic, I want non-GMO, I want this, I want that, then and they vote with their dollars and they put their money where their mouth is, then the corporations are happy to oblige, because, hey, look, they're in the business of selling whatever it is, so long as they have their spread and their margin, right? And so I'm a big advocate of voting with your dollars and changing the healthcare system on the front end. Right. Look, if you're already coming in with hypertension, you're on 6 drugs, and you need a stint, it's hard to say, well, you should start eating broccoli and you're going to be okay. Right. It's a great thing to say for the long term.
Well, Dean Ornish might say that.
Dean Ornish would say that, right? Yeah, and so there's so much liability there that if someone has a heart attack the next day, are you at fault, right? So a lot of doctors really shy away from that because of the liability, and there's a lot of lawyers out there sharpening their and there's medical malpractice. That's a big thing, right? There's medical malpractice, and then there's lawyers that are kind of going after doctors doing whatever they do. So I mean, my take on it is, if you systemically start changing the food delivery system and kind of dealing with the macroeconomics, we were talking about this the other day with the Farm Bill, and how there are some provisions in there to really allocate some of these subsidies for healthier food options and organic produce. To me, that is very welcome news, because I think that can move this whole debate around much more than doctors changing a word and turning it into a diagnosis.
I agree with that, and I love this idea. I want to translate the vote with your dollars into a message, which is go to McDonald's and demand your kale. How's that? So I think about some of the fast food places that I go to, and I can think of a couple that are here in the Bay Area and around nationally. One is Chipotle. Like, I can get a really good meal at Chipotle. I can also go to, there's another place, I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but they actually have a kale salad on their menu, and it's a fast food restaurant. So I do feel like I'm a big fan of using these large systems that are in place already and getting better food, getting the organic produce, getting the more nutrient-dense foods to people as a way of countering the obesogenic diet that we tend to eat. And I think it's also, when we start talking about some of these other drivers of obesity beyond how much you eat, and it turns out that we're actually eating less now than we were recently. So we are turning that ship around. We're not exercising more. We need to work on that. These other drivers like the genetics, the microbiome, the environmental toxins, I want to maybe give a hopeful message around that, because I have found in my practice, and I think you found this too, Pedram, that there are many ways to amplify the innate intelligence of the body and to improve your detoxification. Whether it's as simple as taking probiotics, which has been shown now in humans to reduce insulin resistance, kind of the early root cause that leads to obesity. You can do that with things like your fork, with probiotics that you take. And I just was reviewing a study looking at 5 different supplements that increase insulin sensitivity. So, there's many strategies that people can use. I don't want this to just be kind of a doom and gloom conversation about should it be a disease or not, and to have a sense of hopelessness about trying to reduce or reverse the obesity epidemic.
I love it. I think we should just jump into this, because this is where people are really struggling too. I think we could agree that the old model of calorie counting and input versus output is obviously failing for a lot of people for a plethora of reasons. But so let's kind of tease some of this stuff out, right? You have people who have insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance issues, right? And so basically they're uncontrolled in their blood sugar, and then their adrenals jump in. And every time the adrenals jump in to try to balance out the blood sugar, you get a cortisol bump. And cortisol tells your body, hey, go ahead and store some fat for a rainy day, we're in trouble, right? And so you have that kind of whole adrenal axis. Then you have the stuff that we talked about in a previous show when we were talking about endocrine disruptors and toxins coming in the body and being stored in the fat. Right, and one of the articles I think at that point we had reviewed was this whole notion that fat cells will hold the toxins that our body doesn't know what to do with, and then once we go through some detox and the body starts letting go of these toxins by lysing the fat, these toxins are in the bloodstream. The body doesn't know what to do with them again, and so it signals the thyroid to slow down and get us to get fat. Right.
That's right. Yeah, the toxic load goes up as you lose weight, which is one of those terrible ironies. And it's also, one other important point, I don't want to interrupt you, but very briefly, for folks who are overweight and obese, who have more fat, they also have a higher toxic load of these environmental disruptors. So compared to lean individuals, they have more of these environmental toxins. And it's just another factor to kind of throw in terms of that vicious cycle that you were talking about of getting fatter and fatter and fatter no matter what you do.
Yeah, and then there's also the skinny fat, right? Because you get people who don't necessarily present as obese, but then you start measuring their visceral fat, and they're still carrying a lot around the organs, which then, it's the insulin resistance and then the whole metabolic syndrome stuff starts coming up again. I mean, what's the number one reason people go to the doctor's office? A lot of times it's fatigue. Right, I don't feel well, malaise, and so what is that? Where is it coming from? And so it's also, I think that the IFM and some of these different groups that are doing some wonderful work and kind of advancing medicine at this point are bringing to light some of the more complicated array of medical conditions that are coming from environmental and lifestyle issues right now that 90% of the doctors out there have no idea about. Right, so they're still in that old model, and guys, the science is there. right? The science is there, and it takes the industry 10 to 20 years to catch up with the science sometimes, because remember, medicine is a business, but science is science. And so if you're following good science and you see this stuff there, are you going to wait 10 to 20 years for the medical industry or the business to catch up and finally have your old guard doctor say, hey, it turns out broccoli is good for you, right? Or are you going to spend the next 20 years getting better and thriving and living with vitality in this world, right? And so I really encourage people who are listening to this to really look at what's out there and what some of the new data is pointing to and showing. And if you got one of those bah humbug doctors, you might want to go ask around a little bit, because you're reviewing literature all the time, as am I. I got studies landing on my desk every day, and it just makes you scratch your head and say, oh my goodness, this is huge. How do people not know about this?
I know, it's still stunning to me that almost every day I get pushback from conventional doctors who say, adrenal dysregulation, that's not an entity. Your adrenals are either perfectly fine or they're in failure. There's no middle ground. And you and I both know that that's not true. Actually, there's thousands of studies to show that your adrenals and their function in that in-between state is really important to pay attention to, and can be associated with lots of problems, including obesity and high blood sugar and insulin resistance.
Mm-hmm. And Mark Hyman, calls it diabesity. Really, I mean, the crisis that we have in this country is really a blood sugar crisis in a lot of ways, because we had this kind of non-fat thing going on for a long time, and a lot of things that we're looking at now is how the body processes sugar and how that sugar gets transformed into fat, right? So if you're up in the morning having your whole grain cereal with your low-fat milk and your cup of orange juice thinking you're doing yourself a favor, you might want to look again, because that's pretty much getting converted into triglycerides and leading to this problem. And at some point, I know you were told that that's a good breakfast, right?
Yeah, not anymore, right? What did you have for breakfast today, Pedram?
I had turkey bacon and free-range organic eggs, and some broccoli and some carrot sticks in the car on the way in.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So got some veg in there, got some good protein source, and I like eating a good solid breakfast because I need my energy all day, and I'm not going to borrow from tomorrow's energy today by drinking coffee all day just to get through. Right? Nice. Every day should be its own kind of profit center, if you will. Every day.
Okay, we're getting some really good quotes out of you today. It's pretty stunning. So I want to add in one little piece here. I have recently started testing my blood sugar almost every morning. And yes, I am a total MIT biohacker, but even so, it's not expensive to do this. You can get a little kit from the pharmacist. And I was learning just last year from Mark Hyman, when his book Blood Sugar Solution came out, about how the range that we use, as usual, the normal range that we use for fasting blood sugar in the morning, which has been 70 to 99 for decades, is probably outdated. And if you want to use an optimal range, it's really more 70 to 86. And when you have a fasting blood sugar 87 or higher, that signals some of the early phases of insulin resistance. So I love to give our listeners practical tools that you can use, and testing your fasting blood sugar might be one of those, or even take a look at the fasting blood sugar that your conventional doctor has tested for you. Usually they're willing to do that one, and see what your score is. If your score is 99, that's not good. That's not normal. We need to do something about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, just because, what is it, 120? If you have a fasting blood glucose of 127 3 times in a row or something, then all of a sudden you are diabetic, right? But what if you're at 125? Does that suddenly make you not diabetic? Or does that make you on the road to diabetes and something that really needs to be looked at? And so, and that kind of leads us back to this whole obesity as a diagnosable illness type of thing, right? Is at what point is it a problem? Well, it's a problem when it's a problem on a functional level, right? When your body's systems start to break down, they're not working correctly, and you're not processing sugar, and you're storing it as fat that you don't need. So do you wait until you have 30 more pounds of that fat you don't need to call it a problem? Or do you sort out the problem when the body's systems are yelling and screaming, saying, hey, I have an issue here, so that you can kind of course correct along the way, right? And so if your fasting blood sugar is already coming up, if you're already kind of hovering high in the hundreds but not quite at 127, that is a functional blood sugar issue as far as I'm concerned, period. And that needs to be looked at because it's going to mess with your hormones, it's going to mess with your adrenals, it's going to mess with your mood, and I'll tell you, it's going to mess with your marriage. I can't tell you how many hypoglycemics, how many marriages I've saved just by fixing blood sugar issues with people, because people get cranky, man. It is not pretty.
It is not pretty, and I'm telling you, couples therapy is not the answer in that situation. It can be as simple as getting some protein and getting the right vegetables. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and you can talk it out all you want. You know, if I go too long without eating, I'll eat this desk. You know, I don't care what it is. It's like, and I was just on a consult with a patient this morning actually about this, and you know, she misses meals all the time, right? And then someone brings in donuts or cookies or what have you into the office, and once you're already hungry, that you're already in survival mode. The brain is saying, "Look, dummy, go get me some sugar," and I don't care. So you're not in your frontal lobe, you're not in your cognitive kind of rational thinking parts of your brain to say, "Oh, well, that might not be good for me." You just grab and say, "Yum, sugar," right? And so it's pretty predictable, guys. Like, I can predict every single day right around noon I'm going to be hungry, right? And right, and it always kind of shocks me when people, you know, are like, "Oh my God, I'm so hungry." Well, it's lunchtime. What do you expect? And so we can really look at predicting that stuff. You know, you're a popular gal over there, Doc.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. It's, you know, if I've, you know, the problem is when the phones aren't ringing, right? You want, we know you're relevant.
I think it's the plumber.
Right. So long story short, guys, have snacks around. I mean, we can't get into the very specifics on this show right now in this format, but we can drill into it later. I was thinking of maybe having Mark Hyman, maybe Johnny Bowden, maybe getting some of our colleagues and friends on a show with us in the near future to talk about this stuff, and taking questions from people to be able to kind of hash out some of these things. But long story short, have healthy snacks around, so you're not surprised when you're hungry, and if you're already hungry, it's too late kind of thing. Just kind of nosh here and there a little bit, and then you don't go through these big valleys where then all of a sudden you got to eat like a double cheeseburger because you're starving.
Well, really good point. And I was just looking this morning at Mark Hyman's list on his quiz, where he's asking people whether they might be insulin resistant or not. And you just raised a few of them, but I think it might be worthwhile just to mention some of them. You know, one is getting irritable or cranky if you go more than 2 to 3 hours without a meal. That's kind of a sign that your blood sugar is swinging wildly, too high and then too low. Also, if you feel really calm after eating, like if you eat and then you feel really calm, that can be a sign of these blood sugar swings that are happening. Having increased thirst, there's a long list. On his website, he's got many different factors that he asks people about. But also that patient that you were describing who skips a meal and then hears jungle drums unless she starts eating donuts. That's a really common one, not being able to stop once you start eating carbohydrates. So there's a long list of symptoms that we can talk about. But I also wanted to say for our listeners, if you have questions for us, put them in the comments section. We want to hear your questions and suggest future topics. We really want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing this for you guys. We hope this was useful and relevant. If so, share it with your friends and get it out there. Let us know what you want to hear. Let us know who you'd like on the show, and we'll get them for you. We got a lot of friends in high places, and we'll bring these wonderful people to the party. And the whole point is to stoke a dialogue, right? It's not about saying black or white. Obesity is disease or not disease. It's the why, and gray is where all the magic happens. So for us to delve into the why is really where I think we can fix a lot of these things by educating people to learn how to help themselves. So, Doc, I want to thank you very much for your time.
We got so many good quotes out of you today, Pedram.
Excellent.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm gonna be careful not to borrow from tomorrow today. I'm going to stay within my profit center today. Thank you for that one.
It's all yours. All right, we'll see you again next week.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye everybody.